Hello, everyone. I am Brian. I have Ian and Matthew Friedman with me, and we are inside the lab for NFL Week 10. As always, we're going to dive into all of the injury updates that we just received. We're going to talk about how that affects offenses and defenses, how it might have changed some of our projections within our NFL models here at Labs. And then we'll take some user questions at the end. We usually go about 20 minutes, so we'll hopefully leave about 5 minutes for user questions. Throw those into the chat, and we'll get through as many as we can. All right, guys, let's dive in. Let me go ahead and get my screen up here so we can have an idea, so you guys can see exactly what we're talking about here. All right. Cool. All right, Ian, let's run through some of the stuff that we got. One thing that wasn't, super surprising this morning, we're going to go over a lot of the stuff from this morning, but I do want to hit on this one in particular, the Jets running back situation, just because it is such a big part of the slate. We got word, a while ago that Matt Forte was going to be out. So Bilal Powell is in. What are your expectations, Ian, on sort of the breakdown of this backfield with Powell and McGuire and how they set up against Tampa Bay today?
Yeah, we've seen a situation once this year where Forte missed a game, and we basically saw a 75-25 split between Powell and McGuire. McGuire actually, he only played 25% of the snaps and ended up racking up 12 touches and was pretty efficient with his carries. But definitely seems like Powell will get that chance to work as the lead back this afternoon. We'll say that, we look back on Powell's stats, and it's easy to see that game where he was the lead back and he really exploded. He did kind of have a 75-yard touchdown that was more or less the whole defense gave up and thought he was down. So, 4,000 getting all those touches, can't hate on that, but maybe not the complete smash spot that one game log will make it out to be.
That's very fair. Yeah, Freeman, I mean, if we look at our projected ownership right now, Bilal Powell, 51 to 60% projected ownership on DraftKings. I mean, he's going to be one of the highest owned players that we've seen all year. What are your thoughts on him at that projected ownership? Do you think it should be lower, even above the field?
I'm fine if you want to fade him. I mean, any running back at that projected ownership, it's either you're looking to block by owning him, or I think you probably want to be underweight on him. I think
in tournaments.
Yeah, in tournaments. In cash, I think I think he's going to be a must play for a lot of people in cash, just because not only based on what he's done this year, but based on what he did last year in the games when Forte was out and or extremely limited. Powell has had a lot of success, and granted that was a different offense, different system, but still a lot of reasons to be bullish on him, especially just because of the projected touches and then the cheap salary. So a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, 4K is just really hard salary to fade, and especially in cash games. But there's a lot of value, if you wanted to build different GPP rosters with guys around him that are also good value, or if you just wanted to build sort of a different roster construction, I think that is viable in Week 10. All right, let's keep on moving here, Ian. We always got to spend at least a couple minutes on the Washington Redskins because they always have, at least 15 guys injured. But it looks like we might have an offensive line that's actually playing today. What's going on with the Redskins?
Yeah, all 15 of those injured guys are mostly back this week for once. Whole offensive line is going to be there. Trent Williams, Sean, Spencer, Scherf, and Moses. So that's, obviously a great thing for Kirk Cousins and company. Big news on the other side of the line is Everson Griffin, one of only 3 guys this season with double-digit sacks. He's out. So basically everything going the Redskins' way along the line of scrimmage. They will be without Niles Paul and Jordan Reed again. So we're looking at another week where Vernon Davis is just that featured tight end. But it's a good spot for him more so this week, even though the Vikings are pretty tough, just in that we don't have to worry so much about him potentially staying in the block. So they can kind of, even though Crowder's back in the fold of things, Vernon can kind of more or less act like that true tight end than an extra offensive tackle. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, Freeman, what are your thoughts on Davis and this offense? Obviously looking better with these offensive line players but still a tough matchup against the Vikings defense that's good with or without Griffin,
Yeah, Davis is definitely interesting without Reed. I would say on defense, it's hard to quantify the impact of losing any given player, but to the extent that people have been able to quantify that successfully, the loss of a cornerback or the loss of a really good pass rusher, those are pretty significant for defense. So that is one thing that definitely is in the favor of the Redskins, especially considering that their offensive line is getting healthy right now. So we have them, I should say that they are implied in terms of the Vegas total for only 20.25 points. That feels kind of low considering that they are getting healthy right now and that they are going to be facing a defense that won't be applying as much pressure as they've been used to.
Yeah, and I guess it makes like the Vikings D less appealing as well, right?
Yeah, a little less appealing.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep on moving here. Let's go to this Jaguars team here. We do have Leonard Fournette back after a month, for various reasons, be it injuries or missing a team picture. But the one that we did get injury status today was Marquise Lee. What's going on with him, Ian? What are your thoughts on him and his matchup against Hayward?
Yeah, Lee's going to be out there. He's been missing some early week practices the last few weeks, so nothing too alarming. But the matchup isn't great. We've seen Bortles have some success the last few weeks, but this Chargers team is going to be the toughest secondary he's seen in a while, and especially in Lee's case, likely shadow coverage from Casey Hayward definitely isn't a good thing for him. Hayward's done a great job in some of the league's better receivers this season. Also concerned is Jeremy Parnell, their right tackle, is out of the game, so not everything going the Jaguars' way, but this is still an offense that we know is going to pound the ball more than anyone else. I believe they have an extra 3.5 rush attempts per game over the number 2 team in the league. And we actually had one news blurb come out mentioning how they have 4 running backs active since they were impressed with what Yeldon did. But Fournette is still that guy, and we can still kind of expect that offense to run almost exclusively through him.
Yeah. Freeman, I was a little surprised to see that they had all of those running backs active. Does that like downgrade Fournette at all? He was like their top 5 draft pick, so maybe not.
Yeah, I don't think it downgrades Fournette at all. If anything does downgrade Fournette, it's the loss of their right tackle. But no, there's no reason I think really to fade Fournette, given that this is, let me rephrase that. The Jags like to run the ball, so that's a reason to be bullish on Fournette. They are, however, going against a defense that is number 2 in the league at holding teams below their implied total. And they're number 2 just behind the Jags, who are number 1. So either way, this is going to be a game that is pretty low scoring, especially because both of these teams like to run the ball. So if we're swinging this back to Marquise Lee in terms of his health, even though he's healthy, I don't see there being any reason to play him, especially given the matchup.
Yeah, it looks like a defensive struggle for sure. All right, let's keep on moving here. Let's go to the Indianapolis Colts. Tough matchup here against the Steelers, who are really good at limiting big plays, and that's what we know about T.Y. Hilton. Had a bunch of big plays last week. We can see here in his game log, exploded for 37.5 DK points. Looking like he might be questionable, Ian, but he is in. What do you like? What are your thoughts on Hilton in this matchup?
Yeah, so T.Y. was a midweek downgrade, which always concerns us, especially smaller receiver his size, dealing with a groin injury. Don't want to lose any speed there. But yeah, you said it, man. It's a tough matchup here. This Steelers defense, they let Stafford go for 400 plus, but before that, no other offense even had more than 225 passing yards on him. So wherever Hilton lines up, he works in the slot plenty too. But Steelers, run more zone coverage than just about anyone. Pretty good at keeping guys in front of them, preventing those deep big plays you were just talking about. So even though he's going back home on the turf, with this injury concern of him maybe not being 100% in the matchup, pretty tough spot for T.Y.
Yeah, T.Y.'s an interesting guy, Matt. Big explosion game last week. He's still pretty cheap. He's under $6K on DraftKings. So that's still a salary we would probably want to buy Hilton most weeks at. But tough matchup, maybe a little bit limited. And I wonder if he's actually going to exceed our thoughts on his ownership just because of recency bias. What are your thoughts on this game, this offense?
Yeah, I'm fine with being underweight on Hilton in this spot.
That was such a great 40.
Yeah, I was thinking you would be tilted if you had Hilton in this spot because, as Ian said, basically wherever he lines up, he's going to have a pretty tough matchup. with Hayden on the outside, and then Mike Hilton on the inside in the slot, who's actually had a pretty decent, I think, rookie campaign. So the Steelers are holding opposing wide receivers to the second fewest fantasy points per game this year. So really not a great spot in general in terms of the matchup. And then especially with the midweek injury flaring up for a guy who relies on his speed, that's it's pretty devastating. So I think you always want to have some exposure to Hilton when he's at home, but I think being underweight is the way to go, especially because of recency bias, which will probably inflate his ownership.
Very fair. If he absolutely busts today, Matt, I hope that you have Tilton on Twitter just like teed up, ready to go. That was perfect. All right, let's keep on moving here. Let's go to this Cowboys Falcons game, which had a very, very high total. I think it opened at 53. It is down quite a bit to 49. We're seeing some sharp money on the Falcons all throughout the week, still here on Sunday morning. We got some news that Dez is going to be in, which would have been problematic if both he and Zeke were out, but he is going to be in. Ian, what are your thoughts on this? This game really is sort of an interesting one, in Dez in particular.
Yeah, Dez had this knee and ankle injury last week. He didn't practice till Friday, but was already saying Thursday that he was fully ready to get out there and play. So, it's not great, obviously, that he wasn't able to practice, but he was saying that this is definitely less significant than his knee injury last year. So we can at least expect a fairly healthy Dez out there. The matchup for him's not bad at all. Robert out. He's not going to see shadow coverage from Desmond Trufant, who hasn't been traveling with anyone this season. But Alfred's definitely exploitable. And, if the Cowboys have this philosophy that they want to now get probably their best playmaker on offense the ball a little bit more, that obviously helps. One interesting tidbit this morning is that we saw from Schefter that Alfred Morris is, of course, getting the start, but it's more of a hot hand approach than we might be guessing about. Rod Smith is really that second guy, and there's been a lot of Cowboys beat writers kind of talking him up. So Morris is the guy. If he gets going, they're not going to bench him, obviously, but I think Rod Smith has a real chance of kind of getting in there and having a chance to make some plays.
Yeah, I mean, with Powell on the slate, you obviously don't have to go with these guys in cash games for sure. But Freeman, we definitely want some pieces of this game. It's still, even with the drop in the total to 49, it is still the highest total on the slate. Who are you interested in here, on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, so the sharp money has just pounded this total down throughout the week, and I think probably some people sensed that Zeke was going to be out, just kind of based on the opening spread, and it really hasn't moved as much as maybe you think it would move based on when during the week we learned that Zeke was out. But if I'm looking to get exposure to this game, it's either going to be, I think, through Dak Prescott or on the other side of the ball. The sharper money is on the Falcons, and Devontae Freeman is a home favorite, which is traditionally a decent spot to get exposure to him. So he's someone that I would be interested in. The Cowboys, I don't know. Dez is injured. You have this backfield approach where you don't know for sure who's going to be getting the ball. I don't know. I think if I'm going to go with anyone on the Cowboys, it would be Dak.
Yeah. It's a weird game. It should be full of fantasy goodness, and it's hard to really have some conviction plays, Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, I was going to say real quick, I forgot to mention Tyron Smith, their all-world left tackles out with a going back injury. So that might honestly be a bigger loss than Zeke.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. Good points there. Okay. Get some questions in the chat here. I have the chat pulled up, so we're going to answer those in just one moment. We have one more injury situation that we want to touch on, but go ahead and get those questions in so they can be queued up right after we finish this last one. The Buffalo Bills at home hosting the New Orleans Saints. We did get word on Kelvin Benjamin, Charles Clay. Ian, what's going on with them, and what are your thoughts on this offense?
Yeah, Benji's good to go. He just got traded too late in the week last week for him to play then. In terms of his role, though, it's tough to say with this wide receiver group, kind of been a different wide receiver one every week of the season. So, even though we have seen more of Benjamin than, Thompson or Matthews really recently, Deontay Thompson, I think, is still a guy that offers some big play value. But either way, this game, we all know how good the Saints secondaries played recently. So, Still definitely looking at Shady. And then Charles Clay, Tyrod's original #1 target. So not positive how 100% he'll be. Maybe he'll play some limited snaps. But, so I'd say maybe Benjamin shouldn't lock him in as Tyrod's #1 receiver just yet.
Yeah, that's fair. And Freeman, what are your thoughts on this situation? Would you expect Lattimore to be on Benjamin?
I think so, but it's like this is a team that has like 4 slot receivers. I mean, like
right.
like Benjamin should be like a big-bodied slot receiver, sort of like an Uber Jordan Matthews. And Zay Jones is like a slot receiver type, and then like Charles Clay is more of like a slot receiver than a tight end. So it's just like I'll be curious to see what they do with all these receivers and like where they end up lining them up. But I don't think it's a great spot for Kelvin Benjamin because of the coverage that he's going to get on either side, wherever he lines up from Marshawn Lattimore or from Ken Crawley. But yeah, Charles Clay in the slot, I think he has a pretty nice matchup. The safeties and Von Bell and then Kenny Vaccaro, they're not great. The coverage linebackers and AJ Klein and Manti Te'o, they're not great. So he's in a good spot, and he's the guy that before the injury was being the most targeted by the quarterback. So a pretty decent spot for him. He's still injury-ish. So, it's a questionable investment, but if you're fine with him, he has a nice matchup.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's going to do it for our injury update. I wanted to show off one tool real quick, and then we'll get to some user questions here. I want to hop over to our new NFL prop tool. This is something that we just released this week, something we're really proud of, something we're really excited about. So basically here, you can see all the props we've aggregated and put them in one spot. So you can see a bunch of different sports books. You can see all the props. And Matt, you wrote an interesting article, so I wanted to get your thoughts on sort of best practice for this tool. You wrote an interesting article this morning that was actually just released on using the prop tool and about how, sharp players obviously look at props. Sometimes it is to get a gauge on the public, get a gauge on the odds makers' thoughts on guys, but also, just you can supplement your DFS action with prop betting. So what are your thoughts on the tool and how do you think users can get some value out of it?
Yeah, so Bales, I know this is his favorite tool that we've created. There are a ton of ways to use this tool. One way that I think might be something that people don't think of right away is that when you're playing DFS, you can avoid players that, like you think a player is going to suck, so you don't roster him. But that's basically the closest in DFS that you can come to like selling a player. But with the prop market, you actually can sell a player. You can leverage your knowledge of a player's matchup and benefit, profit from knowing that a guy is going to underperform. And so I think that's one way in which you can basically take the same knowledge that you have through DFS and apply it in a profitable way through the prop market using our prop tool and to see, on which side there's the most value. So for instance, if you think that Phillip Rivers is just going to get hammered today against the Jaguars, you could look at the prop market and look to sell him based on his props. And so that's just one example, but I think that's one really easy way to profit by cutting out players from your player pool in DFS and then looking to sell them in the prop market.
Yep. So this is the default view. We'll get out of here in just one second, answer some questions, but you can also go to best bet, which is really cool. And this just shows you the bet quality based on the odds. And then you could sort by, like a difference, something like that. And you could see the biggest discrepancy between our projections and the prop market. So really good way to find some value. All right, let's get back to the matchups tool. Getting into so many questions about this Giants game. We've been sort of on them in our content, but just like everyone's really interested in Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard. Ian, what are your thoughts on those guys? And like, if you're rolling it back, who's the 49ers guy that you want to like game stack with maybe?
Yeah, I get why this game is definitely so appealing. I believe it's 2 of the top 8 fastest paced teams. So definitely a big chance for kind of 2 bad teams having a nice shootout. I'm still just worried about this Giants offense without Odell Beckham. I really just don't think Eli Manning is a shell of a quarterback. Without Beckham, we've seen his yards per attempt basically fall off a cliff in the games he hasn't had him since 2014. With that said, we do know with all these wide receiver injuries where the production is going to go. So it is comforting knowing that we have Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram as Manning's locked in top 2 guys that we can focus on. I believe Friedman said it best on his wide receiver piece. Like, Shepard isn't this beast number one wide receiver. I mean, he's their number one option this week because they don't really have any other options. But do think we need to kind of pump the brakes and keep reasonable expectations for anyone in this game. On the other side of the ball, I will say Marquise Goodwin has been that guy for them. They're throwing the ball a ton inside the 10-yard line. He's got that speed, but with Janoris Jenkins back, Giants kind of being strong on the outside, I think the guy is Mr. Garrett Selleck. But, again, just definitely risk there because as cheap as Selleck is and as bad as the Giants are against tight ends, we've been pretty high in Kittle the last month, and he wasn't able to do anything. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. Freeman, you wrote about Selleck in your tight end piece, and you even titled it "Garrett Selleck's the greatest tight end of all time." That's playing the Giants this week, which is a great title. Obviously some volatility, some risk there with Selleck, but he's also 2,500 on draft.
Yeah, so cheap.
I won 3 catches.
He's cash viable given the matchup and how cheap he is. I mean, honestly, the Selleck Ingram double stack running it back, go for it. It's the full D-Gen life. Ingram's basically functioning as the number one receiver for the Giants. Selleck is stepping into a role. No Pierre Garçon, no Trent Taylor, no Kittle. Basically the only tight end for that team. Got a target within the 10-yard line last week. I mean, I like both of the tight ends in this game. So, I think either one of them could be your option for cash games, whether you just want to spend up or you want to pay low, whatever.
Yep. All right, let's keep on moving here on questions. Getting some questions about this Bears game, which I guess you guys really love these low total bad offense games. But so let's talk about Jordan Howard. And then, if you want Howard, is this a situation where Howard's the only guy that's remotely interesting from this entire game? And do you guys think that Ian, do you think the Bears defense is going to be chalky? And obviously that could be a pretty good correlation play, Jordan Howard and the Bears. But what are your thoughts on this game and Howard in particular?
Yeah, definitely like Howard. First game of the season, he actually gets to work as a home favorite. So whenever we can get that matchup, it's definitely something we're looking for with our running backs. You said it. It's really hard to get behind anyone else on this Bears offense, especially with Inman and Marcus Wheaton making their first appearances. Or Wheaton played earlier in the season, but he's been out. So really muddled view of the entire passing game. We'll say on Bears defense, Danny Trevathan's out. Jarrell Freeman's been out for the season already. So them having 2 backups at inside linebacker isn't ideal. With that said, I mean, we've seen Brett Hundley this season. Pretty sure he's got the worst adjusted yards per attempt rate in the league. Just really not moving the ball well against anyone. And Bears at home, I like that stack with Jordan Howard. So let's see if they can get it done.
Is anyone in the world going to be watching this game other than people who roster Jordan Howard? Probably not.
No,
probably not. All right, let's keep on moving here. Let's see what other questions we got. We'll do maybe a couple more. All right, let's go to this. Getting a bunch of questions about this Tampa Bay game. Obviously, this is where a ton of the value is on the slate because we have Ryan Fitzpatrick in his revenge game. We have, guys like Adam Humphries and Chris Godwin who look to be having an expanded role without Mike Evans. And then you have, guys like Deshaun Jackson, Cameron Brate, just with the pricing because of the timing and Evans stuff, that these guys are just very, very cheap. You could seemingly go quite a bit of Buccaneers in cash or tournaments. Freeman, sort of how do you expect target distribution? Do you think it's going to be fairly even across these guys? Or do you think, Godwin and Humphries might get the bulk of Evans' targets?
Yeah, so one thing that's just really interesting, this is a head-to-head revenge off between the two quarterbacks. But, I think on the Tampa Bay side of things, we're not going to see much more go to Deshaun Jackson for a couple of reasons. One, and Ian could talk maybe more about this, but I think we're probably going to see Mo Claiborne with shadow coverage or I mean, a lot of coverage, at least on Deshaun Jackson. And then two, Deshaun Jackson, just because of the role that he plays, he's not a high target guy just in terms of volume. So I think it's likelier that we're going to see the extra Evans targets get distributed to Cameron Brate, who plays in the slot and out wide more than he actually plays like traditionally in line. And then I think we'll see Godwin get some of those targets and then Humphreys. But I don't think we're going to see a huge target bump for Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, he's never really been a high target type of guy. Ian, do you sort of agree with that? And what are your thoughts on Mo Claiborne?
Yeah, definitely agree with Friedman. Think Brate's that guy that probably sees Brate and Godwin, like you said, are those guys that see the biggest increase with Evans out. It's tough because obviously D-Jack's ownership is up more because Evans is out. But the spot against Claiborne isn't as tough as I think it might normally be. He was limited all week in practice with his foot injury. He didn't play last week. I mean, if we can get Deshaun Jackson one-on-one coverage against a guy with a bum foot all game, I mean, that's not a matchup I'm particularly terrified of. But he's already elevated with maybe some people thinking that he'll get more targets with Evans out, which I agree with Freeman. His kind of field stretching role wouldn't necessitate that. So yeah, I mean, I'd say Brate getting the most and D-Jack in a tough but still winnable matchup.
Yeah, interestingly, the prop market doesn't seem to be like super, super high on him getting like a ton of catches either. His prop is at 4 catches right now, and decent like yardage prop. But he can break a big one at any time. But it's interesting that hasn't super come up in Evans' absence. All right. Any last words, Freeman and Ian?
Nope. No Twitter Q&A this week. I need to focus on my Fantasy Pros rankings because we're going to have some money on the line for that.
That's right. You got to get into the top 10. And then you also got to start drafting all of your Tilton tweets.
Yes, right.
So, I mean, a man's got to have priorities, right?
Yeah. And really, those Tilton tweets can go either way. If he scores a touchdown and you didn't have him, then you're going to be tilting.
Yeah, it works. It works at any time. Perfect. All right. Well, guys, thank you for joining us as always. Good luck. We always hope to see Fantasy Labs subscribers at the top of the leaderboard, and we'll talk to you guys next week.